right, I want to record a little stream of consciousness here, which I'm titling "From Christian to Atheist to Christian?" question mark at the end. Um, just to reflect on my spiritual journey and where I'm at the moment, um, for myself as well as I'm going to put this out there to um, hopefully hear some reflections of testimonies of other people too. Um, but I've been thinking a lot recently about Christianity. I've been thinking a lot about faith, prayer, trust. Been thinking about um, you know the idea of having something that's a firm practice versus something that is something you just feel and is a very personal thing. Firm practice being like you're part of a church, a community, you go, you do everything by the book versus something that feels more um, flowy and a part of daily life. So where I'm at now is, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school, went to church, and then brought some of that faith and the practice of that faith into university. But then around that time, maybe 19, 20, 21 years old, um, I was exposed to different ideas. I was exposed to the new atheists, the Sam Harrises, the Richard Dawkins, I'm forgetting his name. It'll come to me. The English dude. Um, he wrote Letters to a Young Contrarian. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name, but um, you know, that sort of those little seeds started planting in me where I started questioning a lot of things, questioning the nature of reality, nature of the universe, the start of the universe. Pretty much anyone that's ever had uh, concerns or questions or inconsistencies that they see in religion, you start to just wonder, well, what's really true? I don't think I'm alone in that sort of path. Um, so for about 10 years or so, I'm 33 now, just turned 33 2 days ago or one day ago. Um, you know, Basically from that point, for about 10 years, I'd say till about 30, I was essentially atheist agnostic. Um, but then, there are moments in my life where, I had some breakdowns or some crises of, um, spiritual crises, personal crises that sort of put me back on the path towards God or relationship with God. And, one of those things was realizing, that this idea of worship is what I internally kind of reflected on was the idea of worship. Worship is a human need, is what I sort of came to realize. And when I went through periods of sort of this arrogance or um, you know this this turning people away and really going inward, but not in a healthy way. Is really the worship of self and realizing that you know and then looking around and seeing other people they worship, they worship something. It's some people worship um, themselves, or they'll reach and try to worship another person, or they'll worship something about themselves that they can't even control, like their gender or their race, or they'll worship a government or something like that. So kind of came to that conclusion. And then I was watching, I think it's called Jonathan and Jesus. Is the documentary about the guy who plays Jesus in The Chosen, and David Foster Wallace. He had basically a similar quote. I had written a post about that, and then his quote was very similar to my thoughts, which I think what I said was, anything besides God or anything besides a higher power you can really put your faith in, that's not earthly, is a spiritual dead end. So you'll end up worshiping something that's not God, and that's not going to end well for you. And David Foster Wallace's quote was similar. It was, the trouble with worshiping anything that's besides God is that it will eat you alive. So spiritual dead end, eat you alive. We had different takes on that, but so but passing through some of these moments of questioning and crisis, and um, coming out the other end of that, you experience the grace of God, the grace of other people, the patience that they have, and helping you kind of come back to center and come back to what's important. And even using that word grace is an interesting um, place to come into where I feel now, which is despite my Christian and atheist past, and still having some questions and doubts about Christianity. The way that I even orient myself to God in the first place is through the Christian lens. The concept of grace or Spirit, Holy Spirit, um, or prayer, or the idea that there's one God. Um, is sort of where I'm at. Um, and last thing before I get into my thoughts on coming back to Christianity is another, besides the idea of worship is a need, and worshiping anything that's not God is gonna probably not end well. Um, I was watching Mike Cernovich on the Tucker Carlson podcast, and he said something that really resonated with me, which is what I believe too, which is um, you know coming to Christianity. There's a lot of people that say, Jesus died for your sins. He died on the cross. Jesus loves you. You should have a relationship with Jesus. There's the Trinity, yada, yada, yada. It was like those kind of things. They never like really clicked with me. They never really made solid sense. I didn't really understand it. And like, there's been, Eastern philosophy that I do understand, like instantly, like I believe it's a Chinese Taoist concept of the yin yang, realizing that, to have light, there's darkness, to have darkness, there's light, there's a little bit of light in darkness, there's a little bit of darkness and light, just opposites. That's something that like resonates instantly with me. And the story of Jesus and why we have sins and he died for that. And like, I never really got it. But what Cernovich said is, you know, but I did understand evil, and I do understand that there's evil in the world. That's another big piece that's kind of bringing me back to considering and learning more about Christianity is, I don't know for sure these things about Jesus or about the Bible or other those things, but I am sure that evil exists. And, you know, it's, you can have your eyes opened, by through stories of just complete depravity, evil in the world, and then you can take something like that Chinese, Taoist concept of yin yang and be like, okay, well, if that exists, then there needs to be a counteraction to that, and there needs to be, if there's evil, then there must be, extreme good. If there's extreme bad, there must be extreme good. And besides God would be extreme good? Um, So, that's sort of where I come in now. And I think one of the things that where I'm at with sort of accepting Christianity as true is some of those concepts that are still lingering for me, like why is there suffering? And then, you can look at that as, you know, a an idea of, well, there needs to be suffering because without suffering, there, like the opposite cannot exist without something cannot exist without its opposite. You can't experience light if you don't know what darkness is. You can't experience joy and happiness and health if you can't experience suffering. So so yeah, now I'm in this interesting spot where I bought a Bible. I'm reading the Bible. I watched the show The Chosen, which is good. And I think the biggest thing standing in my way from fully accepting it is the resurrection. That's a big one, because I have been listening to. I had a friend, Matthew, who sent me this series on called Christ Revealed, on just different perspectives and talking about one of the big things um, is that you know, even atheists, they take leaps of faith. You know, the Big Bang is a leap of faith. You know, certain elements of, you know, because you know, the way I was looking at atheism before is, well, I can't say for sure if God exists, or if Jesus was God, or if he rose from the dead. But I can deduce a lot of ideas and theories as to what's going on with this thing called reality and life in the universe, based on science, or based on just observation. You know, so it's like, yeah, I don't know what the Big Bang looked like, or why it would have started, or how it led to the creation of life, right? But I can conceptually understand that idea. What I can't understand is someone rising from the dead, because I've never seen that. It goes so against what is, what is true for, um, you know, besides Jesus, 99.999 to infinity, where, Jesus is the only one of people in the world. So, so now I'm in this spot where I realize that the Christian doctrine, there's a lot of Christian concepts that, you know, I really like, and the way that you relate to God, I really like that too. And I think I still think there's amazing things you can learn from all the religions of the world. Um, but if you look at, history's religion, and if you take the idea that they're all trying to understand God, they're all trying to understand a higher power, then I think the thing that would push me towards Christianity would be, well, are some religions better than others at understanding God and his true purpose, desire, will, whatever you may say about why he exists and why we exist. Um, and I think the answer to that for me is yes, which is, there are some religions of the past that don't make sense. They don't feel right. And that's not to say that feelings always guide you perfectly, but they're they're at odds with goodness. The concept of what is right and what is good, and how should you orient yourself in this world, and how should you live. So, I mean, all you have to do is go find, a barbaric religion of the past, realize that they had a lot of things wrong, and then you'll be able to at least say, well, there's some religions that are better than others. And now the question then becomes, well, is Christianity the best religion? And when I say religion, I don't mean specifically like a church, and with authorities in the church, or you have to physically go. I'm just talking about just the general concept of Jesus being God. And um, you know it doesn't have to be a practicing rigid full on religion. I'm just saying the teachings of Jesus, the Bible, um, those types of things. So, and then you look at the practical applications in the world. You look at you know why do of course there's exceptions, and of course nobody's perfect, but in general Christians are good people. Um, there's you know again, coming to a Christian concept, people are imperfect, so you're never going to have a Jesus-like figure exemplified through a regular person. Um, but so and then you look at you know uh, genocidal regimes of the past, communist or whatever. Why do they always go after Christians? Why is there this sort of dark energy that always seems to be threatened by the idea of Jesus or Christianity? So I also look at it through like a historical, practical lens of um, of people who adopt Christianity and what it does for them, what it represents, um, and the not that again, not that it's you do something and it makes you everything perfect, but the ideal that you should strive for, um, and how the Christian practice orients you towards the best chance at life's maximum fulfillment or love or personal development. So there's not really a conclusion to this. It's just more so my, yeah, again, stream of consciousness, just where I'm at spiritually, and some of the thoughts that I've been having. Um, so, again, I could go through the list of all my objections that I had to Christianity in the past. It's not, I don't think it's really helpful. You can, I'm sure anyone who would find this topic interesting has already thought of all those ideas. There's a thousand debates you can look at on YouTube or books you can read. Man, it's gonna kill me if I can't remember this guy's name because he is my favorite of the new atheists. What's his name? Um, um, well, that search is yeah, Christopher Hitchens. Um, so those arguments are all out there, and but yeah, to boil it down, it's sort of this, the initial Catholic upbringing, which is Christian. I had questions about that. I fell out of practice and fell out of belief of that path. But then I learned that the atheist thing was a dead end. Um, and I'll say atheist agnostic as sort of a interchangeable, because if you're, I think reasonable atheists will say that they're technically agnostic. They technically don't know, but they can deduce a lot of things, um, just from the natural world. Um, but then yeah, so then it was that idea of one realizing that worship is a necessity, a human need, a deep human need. And when you don't worship God, you worship the wrong things, and that leads down bad paths. Um, and then two, that evil does exist. It's beyond it's beyond the concept of someone who um, just did a bad thing, or they were traumatized in their life, so then they passed along that trauma. There's just a level of darkness that just goes beyond explanation, on a naturalistic plane. You know, there's a deeper spiritual thing going on. Um, so those two are the biggest things. And then also just for my own personal life, just realizing that I don't have all the answers. I'm not perfect. I will make mistakes. I will um, hurt people. I will hurt myself. And yet, sort of the redemption coming out of on the other end of that, um, the idea that there is redemption. I think in a world where someone cannot be redeemed is a scary world. And the other concept that I struggle with too is like that everyone has sin. And my initial pushback against that when I was going down the more agnostic path was, so you want everyone to believe that they're just bad at their core and that they need someone to be crucified 2,000 years ago to be clean again. I just don't get it. But I think but that's another Christian concept, you know, that allows people to talk about this stuff because you want to have the humility to not, you know, be coming off as a guru or trying to explain the world or God or anything. And so that having that basic thing of like, look, I'm not perfect. I have sin. This person has sin. So let's just talk about it. Because if you can't talk about this stuff, religion, spirituality, you'll it's one of the most important things to talk about, but you don't want to come from a place of, well, I have it all figured out. So those are again a couple of concepts that I initially didn't understand or rejected, and now I've kind of come around a different perspective on it. So yeah, that's where I'm at. if you happen to watch this whole video, yeah, would love to hear your thoughts, or if you had a similar path, or if you have a different path, you know, let me know. But yeah, interested to hear, um, uh, and talk through some of this stuff with like-minded people. So thanks.